Thank you everyone for joining us this evening for our webinar on short-term versus long-term rentals. My name is Siddiq Farid and I'm a part of the SmartCrowd team. With me are our esteemed guests, Siddiq Farid, who is the CEO of SmartCrowd, and Gregory Lewis, who is the Managing Director of AirDXB, which is a property management platform here in the UAE. Can you see my screen fine? Oh, let me just switch this. All right. Is it fine?
Yeah, we can see.
Yes, we can see. Yep.
All right. Perfect. So guys, do you want to introduce yourselves? Go ahead, Gregory.
Good afternoon, or should I say good evening, everybody. My name is Gregory Lewis. I am the Managing Director at AirDXB, based here in Dubai. We are a short-let/holiday letting company dealing with various properties around Dubai.
And Siddiq?
Hi guys, founder of SmartCrowd. SmartCrowd is a real estate fractionalization, fractional real estate investment platform based out of UAE, Dubai, regulated by the Dubai Financial Services Authority.
All right. And guys, what is short-term rental listing? What is it? I hear so much about it on SmartCrowd, but I don't know what it is.
I'll pass that on to Gregory over here, or Greg rather.
Gregory. It's either way. Short-term rental. Well, it's what I would perceive a very effective alternative to long-term rental. So in a long-term rental, as we know, you are signed into a contract for 12 months. You're regulated here by the local authority under the Dubai Land Department, under RERA and Ijari. Now, the short-term rental or the holiday rental business model is actually governed under the DTCM, the Dubai Tourism, Commerce and Marketing Department. What this now allows you to do is rent the property for any amount of time, from 1 night up to 364 nights. So with this, it gives you a lot of versatility. Now, what you can see is people here in Dubai that are looking to rent a property for a month at a time, 2 months at a time, 3 months at a time, or it can appeal to tourists, people flying in from any part of the world that just want to come for a 5-day break. So with this, the product itself, the property itself will be very different from a long-term rental, which will be an empty property, and the tenant would then take that on, would rent it, would furnish it accordingly, and live there. With respect to the short-term rental, the properties will be furnished. Things like Wi-Fi and DEWA will be paid for by the owner, not the tenant. So the idea of the concept behind the short-term and holiday rental is giving people a lot of freedom, a lot of maneuverability, and opening it up to a far larger demographic than just somebody that wants a long-term rental.
Guys, feel free to, there's a Q&A section. If you have questions as we come along, just pop them in the queue. We have our team, they're monitoring it, and we will address any questions that you have. If I may pick up on that a little bit, Gregory, if you allow me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, this whole short-term rental phenomenon really came in sort of mainstream thanks to our friends at Airbnb. And I think it's a sort of early days around what you call a shared economy to a certain extent, because I fundamentally believe the world is changing. These are early trends in terms of how we live, right? Well, obviously, post-COVID, the world has changed in terms of how we work, but I think even going forward in terms of how we live, in terms of the flexibility, where long are gone will be the days where you will have these long-term lease contracts, even 12-month contracts, where you will have a lot more flexible living environment, almost like a WeWork for living, where you have a subscription-based model and you get a turnkey apartment ready for you, and you can pick up and go and live wherever you want to live by paying a flat subscription fee, whether it's in private real estate or even hotels, etc., and so forth. What's your views on that? So those kind of trends, are you seeing some research on that, or are you seeing that in reality in other markets?
As in based in what we're seeing in Dubai?
In general, in terms of trends from that perspective.
Oh, well, in looking at it as a concept and an idea, it's growing with such magnitude. It's huge. And I give an example to many people that I work with, for argument's sake, something like London, let's say, it's a very big city. You'll find people wanting to take this holiday let, short let, Airbnb model to rent near something like, let's say they're going to an event somewhere, and willing to pay more to have that ease and to have that flexibility to come in and out and go to wherever they need to be, rather than being dictated to have to go and stay in a hotel. So you're seeing a lot more versatility, a lot more flexibility, a lot more availability to these different people around the world that want this product for different things. If you look, as I said, different parts of the world, they seem to be growing at such force. Looking at the West over in America, it has really come across aggressively into Europe. And now we're seeing this side of the world, what I would perceive. Now, I set up AirDXB 3 years ago. I've been involved in the holiday home market for 20, but based in the UK. Winding the clock back 10, 15, 20 years ago, to have a portal like Airbnb that allows the ease, but the biggest thing is it allows casts such a wide net and accessibility to guests from around the world to book. So one, as I said, the clock back 10, 15 years ago, to try and market properties was incredibly difficult. You would do it in local newspapers. It was this sort of thing. Airbnb has come along and effectively streamlined it, simplified it, and made it incredibly accessible to all these different people. They've redefined it. They haven't necessarily invented something brand new. They've just taken a holiday home concept and just made it a lot more functional. And a lot more people have jumped on it. I mean, you're looking at from around the world what different people are making in the sense of income, i.e. homeowners. It's quite terrific. Even so much so, you're finding a lot of landlords in central cities, Paris, London, LA, who are making so much more money than the long-term business model or rent model, I should say, that it's creating a housing shortage. It is that popular. So these governments are bringing in different regulations to try and change that and just try and help with the long-term rentals, because it isn't, of course, people still want that, of course. So it is something which is coming through, and seeing it now coming into Dubai, especially pre-COVID, it's the third most visited city on the planet. You saw the airport becoming one of the busiest on the planet. So when you're looking at the different demographics that are coming through, whether that's a tourist or whether that is people here on short-term work contracts or people here that just want flexibility, it's something which this city has definitely picked up and ran with. And as I said, if you look at other parts of the world and how it really has thrusted forward the way that people are viewing travel, right down to what Airbnb do. They have this magnificent side to the business where you can stay in tree houses, you can stay in converted boats. And funny enough, I was in the UK, and I found myself in the Spice Girls, which was in the film, the Spice Girls tour bus with a giant Union Jack on it. That was on Airbnb. So people were allowed. I know.
Did you stay there? Did you stay there?
Did I stay there? I partially stayed there. So I didn't do a full night. And the reason being, it was actually friends. So we went over and saw them. But to be honest with you, I couldn't fit in the bed. I'm almost 2 meters tall, so that wasn't going to happen. But we went there, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely brilliant. Where else can you do that? A hotel can't provide that. So with what Airbnb has really opened this up, and I think if you were to ever read about me and what I've put out about the company, I came up with AirDXB when I was traveling across America about 3-4 years ago. And there was a specific moment, I've actually written this in this open letter about creating AirDXB, that I actually stayed in a converted aeroplane in a hangar. It's this weird and wacky stuff, but it's incredibly appealing rather than staying in a box with a nice bed, a picture on the wall, and that's it. So this is really where Airbnb gathered their momentum. And then what you've seen is this develop out, that people with a spare room, people with a room above their garage, people with somebody even pitching tents in their garden. It's quite phenomenal to see how far this is spread out. And not only from sharing, as I said, an apartment, let's say, renting out your bedroom, but it's really opened up people's minds to create some magnificent things. Or this in particular, the story I have, someone bought the Spice Girls bus to then put it on. But he was commanding phenomenal money. He was commanding $425 US a night to sleep in this bus. And he was booked out. He was booked out, and this is in the UK. So bear in mind, the UK is a horrible place to be weather-wise. And it was fully booked out into January. So you've got people staying in a double-decker bus, spending that sort of money. And he was making a terrific amount of money. So it
becomes
is
more of an experience, right? Beyond just going to a hotel, right? We're talking about it, right? And I would love to sort of hear your favorite Spice Girls song later on, but that's...
Yeah, I do have a question for
10 points the guy can guess, but yeah, or lady, of course. But you do have that side too, where it's open up the experience. But then you have the other side. You have these people that have, and I'm going to call it as a standard property when you compare it to a bus or a converted plane in a hangar. But the level of income they're generating and taking the focus off Dubai, moving it into just even smaller towns. There's a festival going on. You've got people now renting out spaces in their actual houses or what have you to generate these side incomes. And it's proven to be incredibly profitable. And as Airbnb will say, and they stand by it, is what they want to do is create this community of open friends and this sort of stuff around the world. And they're doing an incredibly good job with it. And them as a business themselves, the rate that they're growing is phenomenal. The level of property they've taken on percentage wise since COVID is the highest they've ever been in a certain period of time. I don't remember the specific figure, but that's something we can obviously report back in. But you're seeing even COVID has actually, strangely enough, but we'll talk about this in a bit, how it's affected the Dubai market, but has actually pushed globally this short let market, and even right down to with COVID, people wanting their own space. They want to rent their own house or rent their own Spice Girls bus and not be near other people for safety concerns. And this short let home sharing platform that is Airbnb has allowed them to do that.
And I do have a question for the audience. Have you ever lived in a holiday home before? Even if it's a Spice Girls bus, a dinghy, whatever works for you.
I'm never going to live that down, am I?
A great story.
It's funny. I only have stayed in a holiday home once. I was traveling for work, and I was in Brussels, and there was some sort of it's a European capital, right? So the European government sits in Brussels. So they always have these events all the time, and the hotels are completely booked. And I was there for just a conference for a day, and I couldn't find anything, and I ended up booking something on Airbnb, and I got myself a nice apartment in a neighborhood. And that experience I would not have gotten if I just stayed at a hotel, right? I felt like I was one of the locals. I walked down the street and had breakfast at a local cafe in a neighborhood. It was quite a cool experience.
Exactly that. You see parts of the city you wouldn't, and it takes me back to this point I was making about London. We have, well, I'm from England, so I'll use London, but you have these people saying we'd rather go and book to be closer to an event than a hotel and then have to sit on the tube for 40, 50 minutes. And then they're finding when they're booking to be near the event, they're rubbing shoulders with the locals. They're seeing things apart from Buckingham Palace or Big Ben. They're actually experiencing it, seeing it and feeling it. And what is incredibly interesting is how you're seeing it from 5-10 years ago, longer Airbnb formed, but the momentum is gathered, is how you're seeing the level of accommodation and the standards of it increasing. I mean, Airbnb was formed from three chaps that were attending an event in America, and they wanted to make extra money. So they blew up a blow-up bed, and they were going to rent that out. And then from that, Airbnb came. The business just exploded in the manner it has, and worth $100 billion. So if you look at that, even from somebody wanting to rent out a blow-up bed on a floor to you can now rent, you probably can, some of the best properties in the world, and pretty significant things as well. And if you're a Spice Girls lover, you have that as well. So it's really done, tremendous things. It really has.
This is a breaking news. We're gonna be putting out a bus on the platform soon. I don't know whose bus. It's gonna be some RTA bus, but that's all good. I think it'll do well.
The
raise maybe a couple of $100, maybe.
Cricket World Cup is happening. We can hijack one of the team buses over here and turn that into an Airbnb.
Yeah.
Oh well, if you could, yeah. I mean, why not? Why not into the desert or something like that? And there you go.
Yeah. But yeah, so it looks like 56% of people have lived in a holiday home before, and 44% haven't. highly recommend it. It's a really good way to experience the country. And just wanted to ask Greg and Sid, what would you say the advantages are over a hotel? What is it so great about holiday homes that you'd prefer to do it rather than a hotel when it comes to, experience or anything like that? Like why?
I'm going to jump in, Siddiq, really quickly. I'm just going to make one point here. Part of the reason I set up AirDXB as well, because I was so frustrated with hotels, I hated being talked to. I hated when you go in, are you okay? Do you want this? Do you want that? And the formality of it. And it wasn't relaxing. There wasn't that. I'm on holiday. I want to be left alone. I want to do what I want to do. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, being in a hotel is a very, very nice thing. But sometimes you just want to have your bowl of cornflakes at 10:30 in the morning. You don't want to have to rush down to a breakfast, which ends at 9:30. And this is something that pulled me into Airbnb. So I stayed in my first Airbnb, it's got to be, what are we now, 14 years ago. And that was something that pulled me in. So I'm going to just say that before Siddiq jumps in and hand it back to him. But that is something, and I am speaking from experience, and I've actually based my life around that, is that the hotels, as lovely as they are, it won't give you that level of freedom, if it makes any sense. And especially when you're on holiday and you just want your own time, you don't want to effectively be dictated to. This Airbnb concept from a tourist perspective, it gives you that, because of course a lot of this accommodation is has your kitchens, etc. So Siddiq, I just want to put that in there because as I said, it's something
I'll take it from a different angle. I'll take it from an investment point of view, right? As to why would you want to own a short-term rental property as an investment as opposed to a long-term investment. So the benefits from an investment point of view is obviously having the flexibility in terms of what you can do with the property. Because if you're in a long-term rental lease and you're obviously locked up, you have a tenant for X amount of period of time, that reduces your flexibility in terms of what you can do with it, whether you want to take it back possession, you want to live in it, or you want to sell it, and the buyer, it reduces your buying network, because some people might want to buy it because they want a vacant or not a rented unit, etc., and so forth. It obviously can help you generate more income because renting properties on a short-term basis just demands and creates more revenue potential than a long-term. Obviously, it has more cost, but those are compensated from the higher income that comes from it. And for all the points that Greg mentioned in terms of why people find it fascinating in using it, and particularly in different specific areas, in particular cities, in particular areas, the returns can be quite attractive compared to what you would get from a long-term perspective. So those are some of the points that I'm thinking from a investor perspective. I don't know, Greg, if you want to add anything to that with that point of view.
To me, it's always been control. It's your property. With doing the short let holiday let business model, you can do what you want to do when you want to do it. If you want to live in it yourself whenever you want to, you can. If you've got friends or family, or even you, let's say, coming through Dubai and you want to stay in it, you can. If you want to put the rates up by 20% tomorrow, you can. You're not locked in. You're not effectively being dictated to with respect to length of contracts and actual rates that you can achieve. And that is a huge thing. And I think we can see that across the world as well. There's a lot of red tape with different governments saying what you can and can't do. And with the short-term let model, beg your pardon, is that you are back in control. You can do what you want to do. And let's focus this back onto Dubai, is a huge thing, because we know it's an investor market. We've got some people that might want to sell it because they've got other ideas, and they can do it. They can put it straight on the market, and they can conduct viewings with ease, and they can move with the times. This is the magnificent thing. Again, Dubai, let's focus on that. The way that Dubai has acted in the COVID pandemic. I know we're not out of it yet, but it has allowed us to, or has allowed Dubai to move so quickly that it's opened it up to the world. And we have seen such huge amounts of people coming through. And our rates, October this year compared to October 2019, let's not talk about 2020. Let's compare it to a proper year when we didn't know the pandemic was there, we're 19% higher. And we're already seeing encouraging signs of November, December, probably hitting about 22, 23% compared to November, compared to the same time of 2019. So you put yourself into a long-term contract, you're not gonna be able to do this. If you're at a set amount and you're signed into that contract, that is it. So these are huge things as an investor that you have at your disposal to be able to maneuver that asset in whatever way that you feel fit.
Yeah, one thing to just point out, obviously, doesn't mean you disregard long-term rentals completely. There's a balance to be had, right? Because short-term, and then Greg will agree to this, don't necessarily work in every single location for every single purpose. And the idea is when you're looking from an investment perspective, you want to have that sort of balanced portfolio. But real estate is expensive, and not everyone has the luxury to have multiple units where well, I'm going to have a couple of long-term and a couple of short-term rental properties. This is where SmartCrowd comes in, allows you to build that diversified portfolio without necessarily having a lot of capital to amass your entire sort of real estate empire. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But there's pros and cons from various perspectives, and you need to understand what are your risk appetite and so forth, and what makes sense from your investment portfolio perspective.
And just on that note, I just want to get a bit of an idea as to whether or not people have actually invested with us in short-term rentals in the poll.
Just to follow on what Siddiq's saying there on the long-term rental, and you're absolutely right, there's pros and cons with everything. We must bear in mind that with short-term, it's a lot more effort, a lot more time, but this is a company like AirDXB to take it out. But from an investor perspective, it means that you've got to put money in. So it means you've got to furnish it. It means you've got to be, we're here to take the stress and strains away, but there's a lot more communication, short-term renting with the landlord than there is long-term. So you've got to look at the long-term, and you've really got to value that by going in that direction, you are renting it out, and that is probably it. You may decide to appoint a maintenance company that the tenant can contact, and that is it. You have your money, it's in the bank, and off you go. If you get, again, bring this into Dubai, you get one check up front. That's immediate money up front that you can then recycle into whatever you want to do. So yeah, I will, even though I'm in the short-term rental market, long-term, if I have a competitor out of anything, whether that's another company, whether that's, the market, I mean, I'll put COVID to one side because that is a competitor, which has definitely challenged me, but the long-term rental market is, we're always, trying to tell the homeowner why short-term's better. But I will concede, there are times with homeowners, and I've said it to them, if you need that money up front, take that, go down that route. If you haven't got the money to invest into it from a furnishing perspective, go long-term. So it's a viable option for, as I said, for having that finance up front, but also to having a less of a active interest in that property through the course of the year.
Yeah, just add to that point, right? To what Greg said, right, in terms of what your cash requirements are, because holiday homes are seasonal, right? So you don't necessarily have a sort of a steady flow of income from as compared to long term, because in long term, what your monthly rental income is. In short term, there's seasonality. Some months you'll get lots of cash, and some months you won't get a lot of cash. So if you don't, you require more upfront capital to make that investment. So if you are able to sort of manage that and understand that, you can use something like a SmartCrowd platform where you have some level of exposure, and you don't have to worry about the carrying costs and so forth, because it's all sort of managed through that mechanism where you can sort of take that exposure based on your risk appetite and sort of allow that. And if you want something a little bit more steady in flow, you can also get exposure to that. So you got to manage that expectations as well, too, to a certain extent. But I was curious, there's 6 people over here that have not invested at all. So they should go check out SmartCrowd.ae when they get a chance. Anyways.
We have one question actually about when it comes to the property management, facility management perspective. So Abdul Rahman Syed says, short-term rentals require ongoing property/facility management. Property owners often don't have the time or expertise to do this. However, does Dubai have an ecosystem yet where someone else can manage your property for you? Greg.
Yeah, www.air-dxb.com. And just so we're clear on the t-shirt as well. That is what AirDXB is. We are here to take all the stresses and strains away from the homeowner for doing this. So we will do everything from start to finish, from getting the permits that are needed from the local authority to dressing the apartment or the villa, whatever it may be, professional photography, putting it online, dealing with any inquiries, right through to booking the guest, checking the guest in, any maintenance issues or queries they have. We are on hand 24/7 to deal with that. And then when they leave, we have the cleaning team that goes in. So it's a very hands-off service that we offer. So that is the physical side of it, but then there's also the other side, things like price analysis and things like that. So it's not just about answering the phone and fixing leaking taps for people or the cleaners going in. It's making sure that your property is being booked out, making sure it's not only being booked out, but booked out at the best rates possible. So from our perspective, something that I play quite a hand in is it's analysing the properties, looking at comparables, whether it's hotels, other short lets, what that actual property is doing, and then changing the pricing to make sure that bookings are achieved, right down to things like altering things on the adverts to play around with the algorithms of Airbnb to make sure that your property is being promoted. So there's a lot that goes on, and not just necessarily what people can see, it's what goes on behind the scenes as well. But that's what AirDXB is. It is a one-stop shop for doing the entire process on behalf of homeowners. And as I say to all of them, you've only got to be reactive, and that's when you're checking the bank statement to make sure the money's coming in. So, and we take care of everything else. So yeah, that's AirDXB, and that's what we do.
And one more question about Dubai. So why is Dubai such a popular place for short-term rentals, holiday homes? What makes it so good compared to like a New York or a Toronto or any other major city?
Siddiq, do you want to go?
Or? So I'll give it a shot. Yeah.
Oh, I can do it. I'm just giving you. I was giving you the microphone.
Let's go with Siddiq. Let's go with Siddiq, and then we'll go with Greg.
No, so as Greg was mentioning before COVID, right? It was the third most visited city in the world. And why not as a destination, right? There's so much happening in Dubai. If you just look at this particular month, in particular, you have GITEX that's happening, which I was there yesterday. It was a gong show, like so many amount of people. It's like everyone woke up and said, let's go to Dubai. The amount of people in Dubai right now is just crazy, because you also have the T20 World Cup that's happening over here. You have the golf championship that's happening over here. You have the Grand Prix that's coming end of this month in Abu Dhabi. There's always something happening in Dubai, right? And the leadership over is doing a phenomenal job in creating these world-class facilities, properties, etc., that people want to come and see, right? Burj Khalifa, Dubai Mall, the Palm, the Louvre. I can just go on and on and on in terms of why people want to come over here, right? But you also, and Greg will correct me if I'm wrong, you don't necessarily get a lot of tourism. You also get a lot of people just to come and spend time over here, right? Especially now with this whole post-COVID world, work from anywhere, with how open, UAE is in general. People are coming here and staying longer. From what we are seeing, the properties that we have managed by AirDXB, the average booking time is not days, it's weeks, because people are staying longer. They want to call this, almost treat this as a second home. And short-term becomes, Airbnb types are a lot more affordable than booking a hotel for 2 weeks. You get a lot more flexibility. You have your own, flexibility to cook your own food, etc., and really have that flexibility. So Dubai is a destination beyond just tourism. It's connectivity from 2/3 of the world in 6-hour flight that you can cover. The time difference, you can be based over here and cover East Coast and West Coast quite easily. So it becomes a very, very attractive place for many people to come, to have, to play, to live, and to work.
Yeah, agreed. And also, accessibility, you've also got to look at what the government's done as well. So with respect to visas, and just what you've said there, the traveling nomad working from his laptop, we saw way more than I could have predicted coming through, which has been fantastic. For summer, we were actually 88% booked between May right through to September. And it was predominantly people internally moving around. But when I say people internally, it was people coming in for 2 or 3 months, whether that was a work trip, whether it was I just want to get away from the country where I'm actually from. There was pandemic issues there, so I want to come to Dubai because although Dubai, as we know, were aggressive is the wrong word, but Dubai did what they needed to do and did it well. And we all felt the pinch, but we had to. And that's what's enabled Dubai to move forward to the point now of 100 cases this week. Emirates is a huge factor. I think the way that they've played this pandemic is phenomenal, whether it's refunds or altering the flights. They've been the last in the sky. They've been the first back in the sky. And they've made accessibility into Dubai very easy. And also, as I say, going back into the government, you look at the visas that they've offered. You look at the relative normality that we had. You compare it to the UK. Early part of this year, the UK was in a lockdown. Dubai was wear your masks, do this, but we've got to keep going. And it was completely the right attitude. It really was. And from our perspective, it brought people over. And there was one chap in particular, I always give him as an example. Sadly, he left me. But 10 months, he just renewed saying, I just don't want to go back to Germany. You know, the pandemic's not great there, at least the sun's shining here. And he stayed the whole way through the summer, again, saying, okay, it's 45 degrees, but the sun's shining. We just have to wear a mask. And it was this that really helped and assisted. And I'm not saying the pandemic is over, but it's really helped and assisted, I think, Dubai to get to where it is now. And as you've already hit the nail on the head as well, Siddiq, it's the position of Dubai in the world. And it's something I always talk about. You can get to 2/3 of the world's surface within 6-7 hour flight. So you look at the level of catchment of people. And if you look at the way that Dubai has then marketed itself and opened itself up and allowed the easement of travel, why not? Why not come to Dubai? And especially with the weather doing what it's doing now. It was a long summer. I think we'll all agree that. But where else do you want to go to have this level of service? And it's something that we all know and we all talk about, but this level of service and this level of normality, it's incredibly hard to find. And this is why the short-let model does incredibly well. We're opening up the market a bit more. There are people that have vocalized to me, Dubai was never on the map, but short lets can be cheaper than hotels. So we're having people stop off. And we've got somebody staying with us at the moment en route to Australia. And they've just stopped off saying, I never would have done it, but it seems like a nice place to be. And it was accessible. So there's all these situations which has really advanced it.
Sorry, we can't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry
about that. So just ask the audience. Sorry about that. So what is the most important factor for you when you're looking for a holiday home?
We're asking the audience this.
We'll ask you.
We're asking me. All right, I was going to hear the beginning bit. Oh, right, we've got location, amenity density, service, furnishing, price. Oh, right. I will say what Shortlets has done in Dubai is there's an abundance of hotels, which we know. So Shortlets in Dubai is effectively a value for money exercise. You're getting a larger square footage, amenities like a kitchen. You're getting in these very popular areas, Palm Jumeirah, downtown, the marina, but at a lesser price than a Hilton or a Marriott, let's say. So the short-let market or the short-let model has really enhanced, and that's why we're seeing the market doing what it's doing. So when you actually say what's the most important factor, if I speak on behalf of AirDXB, I'd say location, price, and furnishing are the three main. If I've had to knuckle it down to one, I'm not sure. Me personally, it's location all the way.
Oh, well, the people agree with you, but they don't agree with you on furnishing.
well, the furnishing, you've got to know where you're staying, and it's got to be nice.
It makes a big difference. I was in a holiday home recently, and the furniture was just breaking apart. It was just breaking. I touched something, it just broke. I was just like, what is going on here? It makes a difference.
You're just very aggressive.
I would say the location, price, amenity density does also probably supersede that. You don't know the furnishing until you actually go and live there.
It's true, but what we see is a lot of people just look at the pictures, not the description. And the pictures is what people book on. And we have the figures showing that. The people don't, or not as many as we would wish, are actually reading the description. It is just, we like what we see. It's in the right location and it's the right price. Book it. But there we go.
From an investment perspective, if I bring it back from that perspective, my recommendation would be spend that extra few thousand dirhams on furnishing. It makes all the difference in the world, and you make that money back in no time. Doing a budget furnishing, for example, for a studio, you can probably furnish it for 10,000-12,000 dirhams, as opposed to doing it properly and spending 18,000 dirhams. And I can assure you, it's a difference of making 150 dirhams a night or 250, 300 dirhams a night. It makes all the difference. And if you do the math, that money you get paid back within a year time.
I couldn't agree more. And if you look at your competition, you've got some stiff competition. You've got 5-star hotels all around you. The short-let market is growing in Dubai. And if you think that you can do it on the cheap and everything will be all right, that doesn't happen. And it's not something we actually as a company facilitate, work with, advise or anything. If we don't believe it is right, we as a company politely but decline working on that property. So to make it look right is such a big thing. If someone's in Sydney, Brazil, wherever they may be, they are looking at those pictures and it's got to look right, and that's what will draw people in. And they can see you in the pictures, as long as you're obviously showing it for what it is, what they're going to. And there's a certain taste that people are going for. You want to make sure it's not too similar to your service apartments. We can find that's not as appealing, and also you've got a lot of competition because of service apartments. But if you get that home from home feeling, soft blankets, pastel colors, it works, and it does. And again, we've got the figures to prove what it does. And you've just said 150 up to 250, 300 for a studio. It is almost that. It's almost 70-80% more, plus in some cases that you will see if you can get that furnishing right.
Okay. And the next sort of topic is, I'm just going to ask it in the poll. What areas do you think are the most popular in Dubai for holiday homes? Let's see what people think.
Karama. Just kidding.
I mean, if you're going, it depends, right? It really depends on where you want to go. I'm sure a lot of people who are from India or from the Philippines, and they're like, hey, I've come to meet my family. I've come to meet friends. I want to live in a holiday home. They'll pick somewhere like Karama. Why not? But let's just see what people think generally. Karama's not doing too hot though. It is, if you're looking for an authentic Dubai experience, I would recommend Karama.
That is true.
It's true. It's true.
That's the real
Qusais,
Dubai.
I don't know about Qusais though. Not too much.
I don't know why who gave these options? Sorry, what's wrong with you?
I just picked some trick questions. Why not?
But on the furnishing element, I do want to do mention that there's different strategies, right? So there could be opportunities for you to present something that is more budget accommodative, that you might be going for a certain strategy. So that doesn't mean you don't furnish it adequately. You keep that in mind with the kind of property that you're buying, the kind of furnishing you're going to do, and then the expectations of what the nightly rate, etc., would be according to that. So it all comes down to your sort of what kind of strategies do you want to deploy, and what kind of people you want to cater to, and so forth. So there's a lot that goes into it, and that's why folks like AirDXB can help you sort of navigate some of that, because they actually have a lot of data points to make decisions, rather than making decisions on sentiments or what you feel is the right thing to do. So if you are considering holiday homes in the future, or if you have properties that you're considering doing it, definitely consult with a professional who has experience of. How many properties you guys manage now, Greg?
We're up to about approximately 130, 140.
Yeah, so a lot of data points to help you make the right decisions.
It's almost like an AirDXB furnished, which is the department sort of mantra we have now. We don't furnish for the client. We don't furnish for ourselves. We furnish for the market. And it's something that we stick to. And it's a conversation we have with many homeowners, because, but we like this. It's not about, well, unless you want to book it and pay us, that's fine. But it's not about what that individual wants. It's about what the market wants. And we have to date now 91, which is grown in the last 2-3 months, funny enough, but 91 different nationalities. So you're catering for a very, very wide market. So you've got to make sure that you're catering for the wide market, not just what you feel makes sense. And you will, see those returns accordingly.
Yeah, so yeah, Abdurrahman, so it's not to your taste, right? Sorry, before you sort of reveal the results, I want to share a story of SmartCrowd's very first holiday home property, right? So this is our third transaction that we had done, and on our platform, and it was our first holiday home property. And we decided to furnish it ourselves because we could do it. Like, how hard could it be, right? So me and my colleague Jake, countless trips to IKEA, and we're a startup, so we're trying to be very cost conscious for our investors to ensure we give them the best service possible. So we're trying to like save money by picking up IKEA ourselves, not even getting delivered. Like, screw it, we're not going to pay someone to do it. Mind you, with only 50 dirhams, we should have just paid some for IKEA guys to come like fix it. But here, Jake and I, we are fixing the furniture. We brought our own tools. We're doing the maintenance work in the place. I made Jake paint the kitchen as well too.
I knew it. I knew it. Oh no! We got someone in. I knew it.
We painted tiles.
Yeah.
I think we did a pretty decent job, right? That furniture still stands. We've done a few upgrades.
How's the occupancy rate on that, Greg?
It's actually done quite well. It's
I was going to say annoyingly. I said, oh, no. He did all right, but no, let him finish the story because they might evolve as to how it.
That was one of the budget properties in Marina, and the whole idea around there was to cater to budget because it's right next to the metro. A lot of people want to come to Marina, not everyone can afford lavish places and so forth. So we thought that's the strategy. Let's deploy it. And we've had that property for just over a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken, Greg. I think it has given out almost 90,000 dirhams in dividend income to our investors, and the property was purchased for only 500,000 dirhams. So if you do the math, that's a pretty decent payback period in a very short period of time. I think annualized return for that property is just over 7%, whereas in Marina, your net return on a long term or something like that is closer to 5%. And that's despite COVID challenges and seasonality and so forth. So that's our sort of experience, right? But that was the first and the last time where we tried to do that ourselves. And then from that point onwards, we obviously rely on services of professionals who do this day in, day out. They have the proper infrastructure, they have the right people who understand design, colors, etc., and so forth, and knows what works. So I just wanted to share that in terms of
we've never had a client to do it themselves and then do it again. They do it once and say never again. Can you please go and do it? It's all part of what we do. Just unload the stress. It's what we're here for.
All right. So let's share the results on the areas that people think are most popular. Yeah, it's downtown, Dubai, JBR, all classic options. You got Dubai Marina, sea view.
What's the answer, Greg?
I'm really surprised. I know I'm leaning in. I can see it. It's excited. Oh, look at this. Again, because it's what I do every day, Dubai Marina is the one. It just appeals to the largest demographic. We have people that are working in DIFC but want to be near the beach. It pulls in all different ages. It really does. You've got the metro connection. You've got the beach, and the beach is the big one. So I'm really surprised to see JBR where it is. Downtown, of course, you've got the Khalifa, you've got the mall if you enjoy your shopping. But I would have said Marina, JBR, downtown, and then JLT. So I'm quite shocked to see downtown at the top. I am.
I'm shocked to see Karama at the bottom with Kasais. But that's just my taste. Anyways, so what's the average ROI like for these areas? Can you just break it down a bit? Like, which areas do you think on a yield basis perform the best, and at least balancing it out with like service charges, for example?
I mean, it's difficult because there's so many different shapes and size properties. You can have something with a marina view, something without. You can have something You can have a studio, you can have your 1 beds, 4 beds, penthouses. You can have the different furnishing, and different furnishing does affect it. But the interesting thing is there isn't an awful lot, because again, it depends on your purchase price as well. So from my perspective, it's quite hard to say, look, this is what you're going to get. But what I would say is, if I was buying, which I am, so I'm putting my money where my mouth is that the marina is where to go, because you have that consistency and you have that largest demographic. So the whole point of what we do is to get it booked up, but get it booked up at the highest rate. And Dubai Marina is always busy. It's never really out of season. So basing that on the level of sort of returns that we're seeing in the marina, but I'm sure Siddiq will have his thoughts on it. But the marina, to me, I believe will pull in a higher return. However, I feel downtown prices haven't quite got the momentum up yet. So you may see that downtown has a slightly better ROI on it. What do you think, Siddiq?
Yeah, so it comes down to a lot of different elements, right? So I think in terms of income perspective, I think it's relatively even keel, right? So for example, what a one bedroom in Marina can fetch, you're not going to see much difference in a one bedroom in downtown unless you have something very unique. So what comes down to is, what's your entry price, right? What are your service charges, and so forth. So in downtown, it's predominantly Emaar properties. So Emaar properties have a higher service charge element to it. So that obviously makes a big difference in your returns. However, the entry points, like Greg said, that the prices downtown are playing catch up. They're lagging a little bit. Marina, usually Palm, Marina are usually sort of the leading indicators for Dubai recovery. If you look at the cycles in the past, and so I think right now we recently started doing downtown properties. We weren't touching them for some time. We did our first downtown property, I believe, August of this year, and the Clarion Tower. And Greg can, sort of give us a highlight in terms of how that is performing. Last I spoke to him, it's fully booked up for the entire month, this month, etc., and so forth. So the numbers are still to come. Marina has been, the steady horse for us. Our portfolio in Marina, we have, if I'm not mistaken, 9 properties with you, Greg, in Marina, right. And they're all performing between 7 to 8.5% on an annualized basis, vis-a-vis compared to long-term average about 4.6, 4.7. So I think downtown will probably fall somewhere there as well too. But hey, it's SmartCrowd. Invest in both.
I have a question from someone. How about the Springs? Where does it fall on the spectrum?
If I could just go back just to say something, and I will answer that. The Clarion Tower was empty one day in November. That was it. In October, beg your pardon. I'm just looking at the calendar now, and November, as it stands, in the first 3 weeks of November, first 4 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 3 weeks, beg your pardon, it's empty 2 nights. That's it. The tail end of November, we're keeping the prices up because of our pricing strategy. So that in itself just shows how downtown's performing. So could reinforce that figure we saw.
What's the average rate there, if you don't mind me asking, Greg?
Average rate, well, we're pulling it up. So September is still low season. Some people perceive it as high. It isn't. Take Corona out. Schools go back in September. People have traveled summer, so they're getting back to work in September. Dubai is still hot in September. It's the equivalent of May. It's just humid and not great. So if we actually look at what we were doing in September, and of course the property just come on with us, we're looking at an average rate of around 330, 340 a night. And that's now jumped up to the highest booking we've got so far. I think it's about 460 dirhams a night in November, which is fantastic. So you can see again the pricing of how we do it and how it actually jumps up seasonal wise. But your average, I believe, in October is coming in very late 3s, 380, 390, 400 a night. And that's, as I said, it's empty one night. That's it. So it's doing well. It's doing very well. With respect to the Springs, interesting one. So if we look at it as the clientele that pay the most money tends to be the tourists, because they're in another country, they like what they see, they book it. When you have people on the ground in Dubai, they will come and they'll try and negotiate. If people stay for longer, they try and negotiate. So the idea is to obviously capitalize and make as much money as possible. So when we start looking towards the springs, how much of that tourist market is going there? There's an element of it, but it's not huge, because people tend to want to be in walking distance from the beach, the metro, the shops, the mall, attractions. But you do then have the family side that like or want to be in a villa. What we tend to find is in these villa communities, like Emirates Living, like Dubai Hills, is it will be somebody coming in saying, I'm just about to leave the Dubai, for whatever reason, I've had to leave where I am. I need somewhere for a month for the family. It tends to be that sort of mid-ish term market. Now, mid-ish could be 6 months, but from our perspective, mid is classed as sort of a month, maybe 2 months. That's the market that it will appeal to. And it's that person that's either already here or aims to be here for a longer period of time. So you will see a longer stay, which you could argue is a better thing. Is it the best area? No. Is it the best villa community? Probably not. You've got the Palm Villas, which does incredibly well. JGE, Jumeirah Golf Estates, that seems to be gathering a lot of momentum. You're finding as that area has actually grown, more facilities are there. The golf course, of course, has that reputation, is that we're seeing people just want to come and play golf and literally stay there for 5-6 days. So we're packaging things up with chauffeur services and shopping services and this sort of thing. But these other villa communities, it really is appealing, I believe, to that person that says, I want a stopgap, I'm either leaving, I've just arrived, I've got job concerns, but they will want something of slightly larger, but wanting it for a longer period of time.
All right, so moving on, let's look at, from a SmartCrowd perspective, how do we take advantage of the short-term rental listing market? How do we capitalize on it? And we can then move on to Q&As after that.
After you, Siddiq.
More of a Siddiq question, yeah.
Yeah.
How do I take that? I can talk about this for hours. So, right, as we've always discussed in length in terms of the benefits of short-term rental listings, short-term properties in general, in terms of the appeal for it and the returns. So the way we have looked at it for some time, given where the rental markets were in the city, vis-a-vis what the property prices were, even though they were coming down, the rents were coming down quite a bit, and but looking at the data, our view was, the rental prices are always lagging indicator, in the sense that because you have, long-term contracts, prices will start moving up sooner than the rental prices, because it takes time for renewals to come. And even then you have certain restrictions as to how much you can raise rent and so forth. So we were quite early in that thought process in terms of, okay, we want to be looking at vacant properties, and you want to have the flexibility and not sort of get locked into long-term rental contracts where you will have, you want to have the flexibility of increasing rent and increasing your returns on the property. So in certain particular areas, the flexibility of having that flexibility was quite valuable. So, and short-term made a lot of sense for that. And it still does make sense for that in many areas, because the rents are still playing catch up. It's going to be a while before, long-term rentals do sort of catch up to what the short-term market is providing from a return perspective. Even though the rents are starting to come up, they are sort of bottomed out. They're starting to come up, but there's still that delta between what short-term can get you and what the long-term can get you. But doing short-term is not easy, as we have pointed out. It's a lot of work, a lot of hands-on work, and it requires a lot of capital, right? You got to buy the properties in the right places. So we just did the poll over here. It's downtown, Marina, JBR are sort of the key places for short-term. The average price per square foot in this area is close to 1,500 dirhams. Even if to buy a studio, you need 900,000 dirhams at minimum to buy. So it's a lot of capital. A lot of people would love to get that exposure, but don't have the capital to do so. This is where SmartCrowd can come in and sort of allow you to get exposure with whatever little capital you have that you want to allocate to this kind of a strategy. So you get the best of both worlds. You can invest some money and get that exposure in short term. At the same time, invest in other properties that are more long term, gives you more steady cash flow returns from that perspective. So there's a lot of different elements that sort of make it easy for you to sort of build your portfolio and diversify your risk. And the way we look at it is, we look at from a rental perspective, okay, on a short-term perspective, based on a certain occupancy and average nightly rate, what does the return look like vis-a-vis what the long term is, and how much downside there is, how bad the property has to perform from an occupancy perspective or a rate perspective, that I have to show up to Greg's office or home and tell him, hey, Greg, what the hell is going on, for it to break even to what the long-term strategy is, because you're obviously spending more money and time and effort. You want to make sure you, and that gives us that comfort level as to, okay, whether this property makes sense to do short-term vis-a-vis long-term. So I hope that makes sense in terms of, how you're taking advantage of it. What's the thought process around looking for investing in short-term properties.
And on that note,
it also gives you
go ahead.
It also gives you flexibility, because you're starting to see not only investors coming and buying properties in the market, you have a lot of end users buying properties. And the one good thing about holiday home properties is you have that flexibility. If somebody wants to buy a home to live in, it can be vacated quite easily, and so it sort of opens up your universe of potential buyers. Where if it's a tenanted property, it becomes a little bit more challenging. And the other thing is also, I'll give you a perspective from our perspective when we are looking at qualifying properties in a market like now where prices are going up, rents are starting to go up. If properties are rented at lower rates of last year's and so forth, that property is not going to get full value for the asset, because an investor who's buying it is going to be stuck with a tenant with a low rate, with limitations to how much rent they can increase and so forth. Whereas with a holiday home, you have that flexibility to do so. That also comes into play in terms of the thinking of what kind of properties you want to invest in and why certain things make sense.
Okay, all right. So we'll move into the final section of the webinar. I know that we're a little bit over time. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We'll move into the Q&A section. So please let us know what your questions are in the Q&A section, not the chat section. And while we wait for some of the questions to pop in, we have a question for you. After listening to this webinar, do you think you will invest in a short-term rental or even stay in a short-term rental? Who knows? Give it a couple more seconds. All right. It's split. 46% people say yes. 54% of people say maybe, but no knows.
That's good. Greg, you did your job. There's no no's. You gotta.
I look forward to a night in the bus.
With the Spice Girls.
With the Spice Girls, preferably. Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure there'll be more yeses if you just have more cranes, buses, tree houses, everything.
Yeah.
Pineapple under the sea.
I'm on it.
Everything. All right, cool. So we'll just move on to the Q&A section. First one is, do you make long-term contracts with companies which might support consistent returns and occupancy during peak seasons? I'm not sure exactly who this question's for, but it makes sense for you guys. Rama, if you want to clarify a bit, maybe.
We haven't come across any opportunities of that nature. Over time, there might be some opportunities in certain places where it might make sense, where it's a corporate, housing for their people and so forth. We'd be more than happy to look at it. We haven't come across any opportunities from that perspective.
From our side, we're already working with companies like Apple, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, McDonald's, who are talking about taking up longer term leases, but when we say longer term, it's more 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So we're open to anything as long as the money and the situation makes sense for the client we're representing. But when you come to that type of client, they want such a huge reduction. Keep numbers incredibly simple. Over the course of a year, you may make net 100,000 dirhams renting this property. If you say to the client, you want 130 because your 30 is your costs, and I then want to take that 100, that person won't pay it, because they'll go straight into that long-term market and say, well, hang on, the same unit here, unfurnished, is 40, so I can go that way. So from our side, we're open up to anything as long as it financially and structurally makes sense for the client that we're representing.
Okay. And another question is, you mentioned that Marina is an incredible location for short-term rentals. What about long-term? How is it for long-term rentals?
So I think that the question you want to start off with is why are you investing in the first place, right? So that's very critical, right? Because that will dictate what kind of returns you require for that investment, right? So it's a more broader question. I don't want to cop out over here, but I think any investment decision you make, it's very important to understand, why you're investing and what kind of returns you want to generate and what kind of risk you want to take, because a return is a function of the risk that you are taking in that investment. Marina is one of the most popular destinations in Dubai, one of the most well-known communities, not just in Dubai, but globally. And there's limited development in Marina, so it's limited supply. So it's always one of the most transacted areas in Dubai. So it makes a good investment from that perspective, whether you're doing short-term, long-term, because you got to take a look at the total return on the investment, right? Income is just one element of real estate return. Capital appreciation is another element of return. So Marina is a place where you sort of get a balanced return, both in terms of income, if you're looking at from a long-term perspective, and capital upside and capital protection from that perspective. If you're after just purely from income, high-yielding assets, then there are other areas where you will be able to generate more income from that perspective. But if you want to generate more income and have that location, then short-term makes sense. But then you have to understand that you're taking a little bit more extra risk, hence you're getting that extra return for taking that risk. It's not a yes or a no answer. It's just some more questions for you to think through in terms of what is your investment rationale and what you should do with that investment.
The other thing, just to follow from that, just as a place to invest, slightly turning off from that initial question, but this is something that I've looked at, and as I've said, I'm actually doing it. What I love about the Marina is it's just added 3 incredibly prime developments. It's got blue water. They put the first address with a beach, address JBR, and they've also got the Dubai Harbour development coming on. There are no other that I know of, correct me if I'm wrong, communities, developments, whatever in Dubai that is giving that value add. And so when we look at Dubai Marina, some people consider it slightly older. Some people can consider it one way or another. But when you start looking at AIM Dubai, the Dubai Wheel, when you start looking at the Dubai Harbour, what that's going to bring, I mean, it's fantastic. That's a Maras Emaar joint effort. The address itself, the highest rooftop bar, the ads that are going on in the Marina is huge. Yes, there's a lot of stock there, but all it seems to be doing is getting better and better. And for a community that you would consider is finished, it's showing that it's not. So this is why I, again, just sort of reinforcing why I consider the Marina. And I think even if you're looking long-term as well, I would go to that location, because the value add. And then just following on from Siddiq has said, you've got to look at capital appreciation. Why should an area do better than another? And Dubai Harbour is already doing that, justifying it as well.
Okay. And I have another question for you, Greg. What percentage of the income generated from short-term rentals go to property management companies like AirDXB and others?
Okay, so we charge 15%. We've got a promotion at the moment with no VAT, and that covers everything. So that's from putting it online, the pricing analysis, everything, right through to us providing 5-star hotel grade linens, towels, confectionery, etc., etc. Airbnb, who's our popular platform, who we use most, they charge 3% plus VAT. So as near as makes it, just a shade over, it's 18%, and that will cover your full management and your booking fees as well.
Right. This is not including Airbnb fees. Airbnb charges a separate fee. Any travel or booking sites charge a fee of the rate as well too.
Okay, just a couple of more questions before we wrap things up. I have another question. Where do you recommend listing a short-term rental? Airbnb versus maybe other options in Dubai? Are there other startups based in the region or portals do you think that could maybe add similar or more value than something like Airbnb?
Greg, you can take that one. I know you.
Do you want to take that one? I'll take that one. By far the best at what they do. We can use anyone we want to use. The reasons we use Airbnb, they charge 3% booking fee plus VAT. Booking.com charge 15 to 20%. So it's a huge increase. Airbnb, we've got an agreement with them where the money actually gets paid from Airbnb directly into the client's account. So it's very transparent. There's also a booking confirmation email from Airbnb to the homeowner, very transparent. So the homeowner can see who's booking, the money that they're paying, and then see the money come into their account from source. Airbnb has something called the resolution center or the host guarantee. If anything's broken or damaged by a guest, we can submit a claim along with pictures and written context of what's happened and a claim of how much to fix or replace the broken item. Airbnb will then send the money. They offer $1 million insurance, contents insurance, safety insurance for any booking. So they're very, very host or homeowner friendly. The other platforms are purely a platform to put your property. When someone books, that company, compared to Airbnb, pretty much walk away. Airbnb created this home sharing situation. Yes, holiday homes existed, but nowhere near the level of what we're experiencing now. So they are the go-to. And you hear this terminology, Airbnb it. You know, a lot of my friends say it, families say it. I'm going to go to this country. Are you going to Airbnb it? It's become almost a way of life to a degree in the traveling world. So, and at the end of the day, AirDXB, my company AirDXB, we were 92% occupancy in 2019. We were 93% occupancy. This is on an average for the portfolio in 2020. This year, we're probably going to hit 95. So with that level of results, and then looking at who Airbnb and what they offer with the lowest booking fee, with the most support, with tools allowing more transparency, they are the go-to. But we can use anyone, we will use anyone, as long as it makes sense for that property and for that client. But at the moment in this market now, Airbnb is the way to go.
Okay. And just our final question, sort of looking forward for the market. Moving forward, where is the short-term rental market going, and how would Expo 2020 affect that in the short term and the long term?
I'll jump in first before Siddiq, and I will be quick. I hope it keeps going. It needs to keep going because that's what I do for my job on a day-to-day basis. So let's hope it keeps going, doing what it's doing. It's growing hugely. And if you've got governments in Europe, including the UK, France, etc., who are revisiting the legislation for short-term rentals because the market has moved that quickly, you're showing that it's growing at such a pace, and it is here to stay. It is offering that level of versatility that we've discussed and the high levels of returns that we've discussed. I think looking at Dubai as a focus, we are arguably in one of the most visited cities via tourists on the planet. Yes, Bangkok has more people through the airport, but as a tourist perspective, Dubai tends to be it. So I think from a short-let market here in Dubai, it's here to stay, one hopes. I believe that there's always going to be a demand for it. That I do know. As I said, and again, for reasons, not everyone wants to be in a hotel. They want to have more versatility in a holiday home. With Expo, I've got mixed reviews, I must be honest. What we are seeing a lot more of is people visiting just to travel, just to come to Dubai, just to get in the sun, just to have flexibility and freedom. We do monitor the best we can of how many people are visiting Expo. We are seeing some traffic, but what we are seeing here now today, so it could be different in Q1 next year, it could be different in December, but here now today, it's predominantly people traveling to Dubai because it is a city people want to visit. It is easy to get to, and for the reasons we had in this chat, you know, it is a great place to be and enjoy the freedom we've all wanted for many months.
If I may add, there's a couple of comments in the chat, and my dear friend Ozan was asking a question about what's going to happen to the real estate market, and there's a comment in the chat as to what happens after Expo, right? I've spoken about this in quite a bit of length. There's blogs that we've written about this. Before I say anything, just want to put a disclaimer: this is not investment advice. This is Siddiq Farid's personal view, not SmartCrowd's view. You know, because we see this data day in, day out. You know, short term, I have no clue what will happen, right? That's speculation. But from a long-term perspective, you know, I'm extremely bullish on Dubai. I wasn't bullish even pre-COVID, because, you know, everything that people saw or heard was real estate prices going down, supply demand imbalances and so forth. But when you look at the data, you know, supply peaked in 2017, and yeah, demand took a little bit of hit. But, you know, those are not long-term structural problems. Those are cyclical that get sorted out, and the cycle. So, you know, we were quite bullish, hence we started this business, giving people an opportunity to invest when the prices were low. And people that did that over the last 12, 24 months have obviously seen the rewards. But, you know, in my view, long-term, I don't think the party is over, because if you look at post-COVID world, you know, this is a destination for not only for tourism, but I think for people to call home. And we're already starting to see that a lot. A lot of people moving here and basing this place as their home and working from here, and then traveling if they need to do so because this place is open. The quality of life, the standard of life, vis-a-vis the cost of living over here is second to none any other big metropolitan city in the world. You know, Dubai is, like Greg mentioned, it's no longer sort of a gateway to the region. It is becoming a city that people want to live and work from. The population is going to balloon over the next years. We're already starting to see a lot of sort of your non-traditional buyers in UAE market, Dubai market, coming from European countries, which you never, this is you didn't see. A lot of people from Germany, France, Italy buying, but they are buying. And a lot of these are sort of seniors or wealthier people, sort of your baby boomers that are probably considering this as a second home due to weather as well as tax, right? Because if you look at most of these developed markets, very debt driven, taxes are going up, you know, quality of life is not what it used to be and so forth. And a lot of people are moving over here and will continue to do so. A lot of the structural reforms the government has put in place with golden visas, green visas, nationalities, is going to drive more skilled labor over here, which is going to have a very positive impact on the demographics over here, which is going to have a more positive economic impact. And that's going to trickle down into the real estate space element as well too. So, you know, from a long-term perspective, if you have a long-term vision, 5, 10 years out, you know, the population is going to be much larger and people are going to need homes to live in. And I think that bodes well from a real estate perspective in general. And that obviously will bring more tourism and so forth. So whether long-term or short-term, I think they will all benefit from a very long perspective. Again, not investment advice, personal view of Siddiq Farid, not SmartCrowd.
Great. That's a great way to end things. I just have one more poll question, just to end on a lighter note. If you had to choose a place to stay in as a holiday home, which one would it be? Famous bus, boat, crane, or haunted house? This is for research purposes. I'm doing some market research for you here, Greg and Sid. Right?
I was actually going to say, where would you guys stay? Coming, so why not jump in with Casper the Friendly Ghost?
Yeah, I listen. I can't handle horror movies or stuff. I would freak out. I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd
probably go on a boat. I mean, it's huge now, right? They have all these floating apartments and everything that are like somewhat like boats now.
I get motion sickness, so I don't think that would do well for me either.
Oh no, you just go on a like a houseboat. We've been offered these in and around Dubai, but sadly, because of legislation, we can't get permits for it. But you just go and sleep on either a Sunseeker or one of the traditional boats up on the creek. It's a hell of a experience.
Cool. Yep.
People agree. They'd go
There
with
you
the boat.
go.
Yeah.
Oh, haunted house.
Nice.
Oh, that's all right. No one wants the Spice Girl bus. That's okay. I'll have
Yeah.
that.
I mean, nobody wants to live on a crane. I mean, hey, look, people want an experience. Okay. It's either a boat or a haunted house. Might be super scared, but it's all good. It's an
Hey,
experience.
Greg, how about we crowdfund a haunted house, 2-bedroom in Marina?
Well, no, what I'm thinking is we just go find a boat and with a ghost on board. Pirates of the
There you go.
Caribbean, something like that.
Haunted
We can
boat.
go
A
sort that out,
haunted
can't we?
boat. A haunted boat. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate it that you've taken the time out of your busy days to come and listen to our esteemed speakers. And I hope that you've learned a lot about the short-term market. It's a developing market. It's growing rapidly, especially in the UAE. And it's definitely a great time to take advantage of it if you choose to. And yeah, if you want to reach out, you can reach out to us at info@SmartCrowd.ae, or you can also reach out to Greg as well. I've given his email there as well. And also make sure to sign up on our platform if you're interested, or if you're new or haven't invested with us at all. And follow us on social media for any updates on any future webinars, and also some of our properties that are, many of which are holiday homes. So thank you so much, everyone. Really
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
very much.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.